Welcome into the first episode of our brand new show, Stallions Stampede, where today we are doing keep or cut with our 2025 upcoming free agents on expiring contracts. And I know what you're probably thinking. Free agency, did I hear that right? Yes, you did. The UFL will have free agency this year for any player that has been on one team for two straight seasons. So that means they've been on the Stallions for the 2024 and 2025 years. So that means if they're not able to re-sign, their players' rights will be waived, and anyone can sign them. And then we had a little bit of this after the 2023 year, going into the 2024 year, where we had a couple players re-sign with different teams. I know Cam Echols Looper. I'm pretty sure he went to the New Orleans Breakers, but sadly, with the merger, we never got to see how those contracts actually played out with a full free agency with that time. And the Michigan Panthers and the Houston Roughnecks have really started off the ball of just re-signing guys. Above those teams are the only teams to re-sign players, especially the Michigan Panthers. The Stallions have 30 players on expiring contracts this year who has been with the season. Who has been with the team for the first two seasons, and we are talking about only the players on offense this week. Next week, we will be doing defense and special teams. Now let's get into it. The Stallions have two quarterbacks going to free agency this year, with the first one being our quarterback, J. Mar Smith, J Money, the Donut Man, whatever you want to call him. But J Mar is an OG Stallion, being with the team since the 2022 season, and then his career stats only on the Stallions is in 2022. He had 1,894 passing yards, 12 passing touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, and then he rushed for 241 yards and 3 touchdowns. Of course, that was the year that J Mar came in. Alex McGough was a starter, but then Alex McGough ended up going down in the first ever game in USFL history. J Mar ended up leading us back and leading us to a championship victory that year. And then in 2023, it was back to J Mar, except for this week. Except for this year, he was the week one starting quarterback. But about the second quarter of that game, he got injured, where his stats for this year was only 160 passing yards, one touchdown, and one pick after, sadly, he had that season-ending injury. But then in 2024, Jamar was healthy again, but he was demoted to QB3 due to the Stallions just signing, Matt Corral and then former UFL MVP Adrian Martinez. He was kind of just kind of moved down in the depth chart just for two young guys that are really talented, and so he didn't have any stats that year. And then of course we all know the story of Jamar actually retired before this year, and but then whenever the Stallions had all those quarterback injuries, he was QB number 5, and so they called him up, and Jamar was back where he passed for 861 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 2 picks, and then he rushed for 91 yards and 1 touchdown. Jamar has been just a Stallions legend, has been, really, he talks to fans before and after the game, and he has just been one of those guys, the OG guy who has been here every single year so far. And he has had so many memories. My favorite memory, of course, probably with a lot of people, is whenever that first USFL game against the New Jersey Generals, where at the last second he ended up scrambling in to the end zone for a touchdown to let them win, and then eventually go on to win the championship that year. And also another one, of course, was this past year whenever he came in and kind of scrambled for that game-winning touchdown. It looked almost the exact same with less people in the stands, and of course it was against the Roughnecks. But just Jamar has meant so much to the Stallions community. But I think that it is time to move on from Jamar. I just feel like Jamar is going to come back, especially with how good he played. Of course, the playoff game was, you know, it was not the greatest game, but I don't think it was the greatest game for a lot of the Stallions players though. But I think it's time to move on for Jamar, just for Jamar. Jamar has been incredible, but to me, we have too many good quarterbacks where I think we're going to go with younger guys. So I would very enjoy seeing Jamar potentially on another team being a starting quarterback again all year without any backups coming in or without any injuries. Of course, I hope he doesn't dominate the Stallions, But Jamar, thank you for what you're doing. But I think it is time to move on from Jamar Smith. The next quarterback on an expiring contract is quarterback Matt Corral. Of course, he was supposed to really be the Stallions QB of the future in 2024. Uh, the Stallions signed him right before training camp of the 2024 year. It was big news. Former third round pick of the Carolina Panthers and was an Ole Miss just star in the SEC. But but because of him getting benched or injured the last 2 years, he has really not been our really has not been our QB1 uh, either season. In 2024, he started the first game, and then he started a total of 3 games that year. He passed for 614 yards, 4 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions. He rushed for 106 yards, and then actually he did lead the Stallions to that comeback win in that playoffs. But for majority of the year, Adrian Martinez just looked better. In the first game, I remember because I was at that game. Adrian Martinez came in. He got injured, though, which then led Matt to kind of start the second half. But to me, Adrian played a lot better that year. Of course, now he's on the New York Jets. Hopefully, being their starting quarterback, may I add. Justin Fields, you better watch out. But besides that, just Matt Corral, I mean, he signed with the Vikings after the 2024 year, but it was kind of disappointing. Um, just because of him really having that hype behind him. And Adrian Martinez kind of had some hype. I actually thought that Adrian Martinez was going to be the starting quarterback over Matt Corral that year, but Matt, he did not live up to the expectations. But then he re-signed. But we also signed Alex Magoo that year. This past year. So it was a training camp battle between the former 2023 USFL MVP, long hair, don't care, Alex Magoo, and a guy who a lot of Stallions fans still had a lot of hope for, and a lot of people that just watch football have a lot of hope for, and that was Matt Corral. But in 2025, he only played in 4 games. He started really started 3 games. Then he passed for 795 yards, 6 interceptions, 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and then he rushed for 109 yards. And then he was injured versus the Roughnecks in Week 4 after he replaced an injured Alex Magoo in early in week number 2, because I was at that game too, where Matt Corral led them to that very dominating victory against Michigan Panthers in week number 2 of the 2025 UFL year. And just Matt has been someone that, actually, Matt this past year led the league in passing even after his injury for a long time. And I mean, he played good whenever he was in. I don't. Matt Corral is someone who I'm really kind of skeptical on, because to me, he has just not lived up to his hype. To me, he passed a lot this year, but there was a lot of games, especially like the Renegades game, where we probably shouldn't have won that game, but we won at the last second. And then there was a couple games this year too where I feel like we got more lucky than Matt actually playing spectacular. But I think we keep Matt Corral for one more year, and this time I say we start him at quarterback. I know Alex Magoo is planning on coming back, but I would start him this year, just to finally give him, have Alex come back and a couple other guys come back, but have him as really your solid QB1 this year to try to see what he can do. So I think we keep Matt Corral, and that's all of our quarterbacks. The next position on expiring contracts is all 3 of our running backs from these past 2 years. The first one being really our RB3, Larry Roundtree. He was the 3rd string running back really for the Stallions since 2024, besides injuries. His stats are in 2024, he had 87 yards, 1 touchdown, and then he had 9 receiving yards. In 2025, he had 86 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, and then 14 receiving yards. And Larry is someone who I remember him coming out of the draft. He got he either signed as a UDFA or he got drafted by by the Los Angeles Chargers. But he's just someone who has been running back number 3. Really has just been, if he's really good if we have one guy get injured for a game, and he's good at coming in. I really think he has potential, but I think we should move on from him just so that he can get some reps, because I really think that like the Chargers took a chance on him after that. I think it was the 2022 draft, and then I mean they signed him for a whole entire year. I think he has a lot of upside, but he's just been really just buried in the depth chart behind CJ Marable and then Ricky Persons Jr. So Larry, I am gonna sadly say cut, but I think that you are a really good running back and deserves a shot to be a RB1. Now we are getting into one of my favorite Stallions players, running back CJ Marable, who has been on the Stallions since 2022, has, battled with different guys each and every year, but still been one of the best running backs in the league, who I took a picture with in their week 3 game this year, their home opener against the Arlington Renegades. And then in 2022, he only had 444 yards, 5 touchdowns, and then rushing, and then 161 yards receiving. He split time with Tony Brooks James at the beginning of the year, and then Bo Scarborough, of course, whenever he came in towards the end of that 2022 year and kind of brought the momentum. But CJ was just there. He battled with both of those guys. So for him to get 400 yards, in a 12 uh in a 12-week season, 12-game season, is just really impressive. And then in 2023, Bo Scarborough was supposed to be the RB number 1. CJ had to step down to RB2. Tony Brooks James did not come back that year, and but whenever Bo got injured, he was the guy for the first half of the year. He totaled in 2023 rushing 644 yards with 4 touchdowns, and then he caught 264 yards and 2 touchdowns receiving. He ended up actually signing with the New England Patriots after this season. Just an impressive season, even though towards the end he did have to compete with running back Ricky Persons Jr., who they've made a really good duo the last couple of years. But he signed with the Patriots after that year. He ended up getting cut. So then he came back for 2024 after the merger, and we had a very loaded running back room. Of course, we had formerly named Larry Roundtree Jr. Bo Scarborough was there for a little bit. Ricky Persons, who is upcoming. Bobby Holly was there, and just a whole bunch of running backs. He was able to make the roster. He only rushed for 416 yards and 4 touchdowns this year. He had 142 yards receiving with 1 receiving touchdown, and then of course we talk about he split time with Ricky Persons throughout the year. Ricky really so he showed flashes at the end of the 2023 year, and then in 2024 they were just a double backfield. The championship game was Ricky's, and then he ended up coming back again in 2025. He ended up only rushing for 251 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 70 yards receiving and 1 touchdown. He was injured, and I know he had to miss 1 game. I think it was the week 2 game because of his wife having a baby, and he just missed a couple times this year, which is why it was less. But Ricky is a guy who I think we should keep him just because he's one of those guys. He stayed on the Stallions. He's a 3-time champion and has been really solid all years that he's really healthy. And whenever he is healthy, he's always really good. I mean, CJ is just someone I remember. I remember him and Tony Brooks James that first year just, chest bumping each other after they scored. I think it was against the Gamblers in like week 3 or week 4 sometimes. So CJ Marable, I hope we keep you, and you're just a great running back. Our final running back on an expiring contract is running back Ricky Persons Jr. He has been one of our starting running backs ever since the end of the 2023 USFL season. In 2023, he had 205 yards, 1 touchdown, and then 24 yards receiving. 2024, whenever him and CJ really split time, and he was kind of like more of the starting running back. He had 406 yards, 6 touchdowns. He had 143 yards and 1 touchdown receiving. He, of course, split time with CJ Marable. And then he also signed with the Seahawks after the season, and really had a huge championship game where I personally think that him or Kiava Tizino should have won the MVP for that game. But, I mean, because he had that one play that was like, it was like a 30-yard gain in the, like, right before halftime where, really both teams showed no momentum on offense, and then he let the Stallions score. I think it was that only touchdown in that first half, and really got them rolling to that 25-0 win in the first UFL championship game. And then coming back this year after the Seahawks didn't work out, he rushed for 314 yards, 5 touchdowns, and then had 61 receiving yards. I thought overall this year though, the running backs were not as good in the UFL as the first year. I just don't know why. Maybe the defenses got better. I don't think that the offensive lines got worse because of the Stallions really keeping a lot of their guys. But my opinion, I think we should keep Ricky. I mean, just, he had that whole story the first 2023 year, which I was actually at that game against the New Orleans Breakers whenever he scored that touchdown. in his first ever game on the Stallions, which is one of those cool moments because I remember just looking at my mom and being like, they just signed that guy this year. And so I was really happy to be, at that game. Uh, Whenever it's his first game. And then, I mean, he really showed up, of course, in the championship game, like I said, but that was probably my favorite moment, seeing his first game, his first touchdown against the New Orleans Breakers. And I think, of course, we should keep Ricky. I mean, him and CJ Marable has just been a perfect backfield these last 2 years, like 2.5 years. So, Ricky, I think we keep you. I think we keep two of our three running backs just because I think Larry is talented and should not be a running back number three. And that's all of their running backs on expiring contracts. The Stallions wide receiver room has only three guys on expiring contracts, with the first one being no Kane, no gain, good old reliable wide receiver Dion Kane, who has been with the Stallions since the 2023 season. And then here are his stats each year. In 2023, he had 326 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, and then he had 771 kick return yards with 2 touchdowns. Really big ones, of course. The one was against the New Orleans Breakers, and the other one was against Pittsburgh Maulers, both in regular season games. He actually signed with the Philadelphia Eagles after that year, and due to his 3 touchdown championship game, he was awarded the 2023 USFL Championship Game MVP. In 2024, he came back even better with 961 yards, three touchdowns receiving, but only 349 kick return yards. Of course, this was because we signed Amari Rodgers, who kind of took over that control as he became a more traditional wide receiver this year. And then he actually, for the 2024 NFL season, he signed with both the Bills and the Panthers, kind of rotating back between both of them the whole entire year. And then, which then after the season ended, he re-signed with the Birmingham Stallions for the 2025 year. Where this year, my opinion, I thought he was the best because he had 638 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, and then he had 421 kick return yards. And he was named his first All UFL selection. And he was just, I mean, there was a lot of times where it was just, throw it deep and Dion's going to catch it. Of course, we know, the game-winning touchdown against the Michigan Panthers, that one against the Battlehawks, and then against the Michigan Panthers in I forget what game it was. I think it was week 10, week 9 or whatever, whenever he just trucked those guys, just refused to let the defense stop him from getting in the end zone. Dion Kane, probably my favorite moment of these last 2 years was that touchdown against, actually, probably the best memory probably was that 3 touchdown championship game, even though I was going for the Pittsburgh Maulers at that time. But my favorite memory personally is whenever he caught that game-winning touchdown against the Michigan Panthers, because I was sitting in that end zone of Ford Field, and I just saw that ball, and I was just saying, Matt, just do not overthrow it, and Dion, please catch it. And, of course, what I'm going to say is we're going to keep Dion. Hopefully, Dion gets signed with the NFL, but I would not mind him back here in Birmingham next year for his 4th season on the Stallions. The next wide receiver is also our kick returner and our punt returner, main one for the last 2 years. Wide receiver Amari Rodgers, who has been with the Stallions since the 2024 year, was really hyped up. Of course, he was drafted by the Green Bay Packers from the University of Clemson. Didn't really work out with them in a lot of NFL teams, and then try to get his career back on track with the Stallions, which I believe he has done. In 2024, he had 207 receiving yards with 3 touchdowns, and he had 303 punt returns that year. He was mainly only used on punt returns. But then in 2025, he was used on punt and kick return with the XFL kickoff model that they use, where he had 175 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, and then he had 160 punt return yards, and then 330 kick return yards this past season. And Amari's just one of those guys that probably my favorite moment from Amari Rodgers was in that rain game versus the DC Defenders in 2024, whenever he caught what we thought was the game-winning touchdown on a slant route in the rain whenever there was nobody there. Of course, the start of the shirtless section, and just that was probably my favorite memory from Amari Rodgers on the Birmingham Stallions. And I say we keep him. He has been a really solid kick returner and punt returner this past year. Well, really both years. And looking at his stats, it doesn't really say a lot, but he has meant a lot to this team. And just I feel like he's always in games, but he's always just doing the little things that make a big difference. So Amari, I say that we are going to keep you on the Birmingham Stallions for next year. The Stallions' final wide receiver on an expiring contract is wide receiver Marlon Williams, who has been with the Stallions since 2022, since the first year of the USFL and of the Birmingham Stallions. In 2022, he had 603 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns that year. And then the next year in 2023, he had a season-ending injury in Week 1 versus the Generals. Him and Jamar both were injured that first week against the Generals, where he only had 23 yards that year. And in 2024, we kept him after the merger, thankfully, and he had 399 yards, 4 touchdowns. And then this past season, he had 253 yards and 1 touchdowns for the Birmingham Stallions. He has really, with the more and more wide receivers since, they merged leagues, and since, we kind of got off the ground, he has been a little bit buried on the depth charts, but he has always been dominant. And probably my favorite moment from Marlon Williams will have to be that championship touchdown in 2022. Whenever he was just going deep and then he caught it on his side and just scored that touchdown in that championship game. That will always live in my memories of Marlon Williams moments. He actually did work out. We talked about this in This Week in Alabama Football a couple weeks ago. I don't remember. I think it was week 2 or week 3, about him practicing with quarterback Dylan Gabriel and a bunch of guys where his college was at UCF. So hopefully he can get opportunity in the NFL, and he really deserves it. Or he just comes back to the Stallions, and that's why I say that the Stallions need to keep Marlon Williams back on, one of the OG Stallions since 2022, and just he has been really dominant and just a good guy to be general with, because I took a picture with him. And that's all the wide receivers that we have. I have us keeping all 3 of the guys on expiring contracts, and now it's time to get to the tight end group. Now we get to our stacked tight end group for both years. With our first tight end covering will be tight end Marcus Bogg, who has been with the Stallions since 2024. He was on the Michigan Panthers in 2022 and 2023. So he's been in every single year of the modern era spring football with the USFL and now the UFL. In 2024, he only had 76 receiving yards. 2025, he only had 23 yards. And then this past year, we actually signed him at the last second due to tight end LaMichael Pedway, who also was on who was also on that 2022 Michigan Panthers team, which is kind of funny. We signed him where we ended up cutting Marcus Bogg at training camp, ended up bringing him back for the year, and he's just been a dominant guy. He was at the Stallions signing thing before the year started, their little preseason fan meetup kind of event that they had. And my keeper cut, I think that the Stallions are going to cut him. I think, unless if LaMichael Petway looks really bad, which I doubt after his injury, it's going to be kind of like the same thing that happened last year, where he's just the odd man out in the room. Like, they have a loaded tight end room with Jay Sternberger, Jordan Thomas, and then Marcus Bogg and LaMichael Petway, where I think he's going to be the odd man out yet another year. But best lucks to you, Marcus. And if you do come back, dominate. But I think it's time that we move on from Marcus Bogg. Our next tight end on an expiring contract is another guy with previous spring football experience in Jordan Thomas. He has been with the Stallions since 2024, but he played for the Orlando Guardians of the XFL in 2023. And then his stats were in 2024, he had 151 yards and 1 touchdown receiving. And then he actually signed with the Atlanta Falcons after the 2024 year. But then he ended up not making the roster. Came back to the Stallions, had 225 receiving yards with 3 touchdowns in 2025. But the biggest thing that Jordan Thomas did that was that kind of split him from the pack, which is why he was really good, was on 2-point conversion. With a guy super tall, like, there's no way that you are stopping him and if you're a small defensive back, there's no way that you can cover him, because, of course, like, my favorite moment was whenever it was against the Michigan Panthers in that 2024 USFL Conference Championship game, whenever he was in my end zone, and I remember his helmet came off or something like that, and then he caught it whenever the Michigan guy was trying, and then he held it up one-handed. And so I think that we should keep Jordan Thomas for another year. He's just key on the 2-point conversions or 3-point conversions if we ever have to go for the 3. And so that's why I say that we should keep Jordan Thomas, also a really nice guy. Our final pass catcher and tight end on kind of the chopping block, I guess, is good or reliable Jace Sternberger. Of course, he has been with the Stallions since 2023. Former draft pick of the Green Bay Packers in the 2019 NFL Draft. And then, of course, his NFL just did not work out for him. So he's been with the Stallions ever since then. In 2023, he had 644 yards and 8 touchdowns and was just the best tight end that he was the best tight end that year, and like was top 5 in both receiving yards and receiving touchdowns that year, which led him earn all USFL in 2023. And then in 2024, whenever the leagues merged, he had 521 receiving yards with 4 touchdowns, and he was also a 2024 All UFL player, so a 2-time All League player. But then in 2025, he kind of took a little, I guess, a dip down. I think it was with all the quarterbacks going down this year, where he only had 239 yards and 2 touchdowns. And probably my favorite Jace Sternberger memory will probably always be in that championship game. Whenever I think it was Tease Tabor or someone else was like trying to take off his helmet, held his face mask, and like he just like helped his helmet like that, and it was just a funny moment. But Jace has meant a lot to the Birmingham community and the Stallions fan base, where we just gotta keep Jace as long as he keeps coming back to the Stallions. And that's all for the tight ends and pass catchers that are on expiring contracts. And finally, it's time to get to the big boys up front, with first being offensive guard Deontay Brown, who has been with the Stallions since the 2024 year. Of course, he's a former Alabama Crimson Tide player coming to the Stallions. And then in 2024, he only had 1 start, but he played in 9 games that year as a rotational piece on the offensive line. And then actually this past year, he had 10 starts. He started all games, including the playoff game. So he had 11 total starts on the year. And just Deontay, this past year, he really struggled against the DC defenders, but then came back to be one of the best offensive linemen. And so that's why I say that we should keep him, because we don't judge people's careers off of one game, but them totally. And he's just been one of those guys that has been really solid on the offensive line these past 2 years for the Birmingham Stallions. Our next offensive lineman is offensive tackle Christian DiLario, who has been with the Stallions since 2024 with Deontay Brown. And then here are his stats. In 2024, he had 8 starts and 8 games played. He did not start in the championship game due to him getting injured that year. And then in 2025, this past season, he had 7 starts, but he played in 9 games. In my opinion, I think we should keep Christian DiLario. I mean, he's just been a solid. I think he was left tackle majority this year and even last year, and just he's been a solid offensive lineman. So I think we should keep Christian DiLario. And yet another Stallions offensive lineman who has been with the team since 2024 is Armani Taylor Priolu. He has been on the Stallions since 2024. He started all games in the 2024 year, and he started majority of them this past year. I wasn't able to find out how many games he started this past year, but I know he was just a perennial starting offensive lineman for the Birmingham Stallions. In my opinion, I think we should keep him. Yet another, the Stallions offensive line has been really good, basically every single year. And just why fix what's not broken? So I say that we keep Armani Taylor Priolu. Our final player on offense that is on an expiring contract is fan favorite offensive lineman Cole Schneider, who has been the center for the Stallions since 2023. And then actually in 2023, though, he split time his first year on the Stallions at guard and at center, where he only had 1 start, but he played in 9 games due to Cole Cabral taking a lot of the center snaps. And then he actually signed with the Green Bay Packers. Him and Alex Magoo both signed with the Packers after the 2023 year. But then things didn't work out, where he came back to the Stallions in 2024, and he had 9 starts, and he played in 10 games. And then in 2025, he had 7 starts, and then he played, of course, in all 7 games that he started. But he was injured. He was injured in week 7 of the year, his first injury on the Stallions. And of course, it's just a fan favorite. Of course, was the shirtless boys. He had that whole, little in that 2024 year, whenever he was just, I guess no one has ever seen him wearing a t-shirt before. And so, yeah, and then Cole Schneider, he's just a very nice guy. He loves the fans. And I mean, I was able to take a picture with him. He's always at all the autograph signing stuff like that, so I was also able to get his autograph. But that's all the Stallions players on offense that are on expiring contracts and whether we should keep or cut them. And Cole Schneider, of course, we're going to keep him. I don't think I said that, but of course, we are going to keep Cole Schneider and all of our big boys up front. Let them boys eat for our running backs and our quarterback to be able to pass the ball. And that's all for the offensive linemen. Thanks for tuning into the first episode of the Stallion Stampede, episode 1. Of course, this is the first episode of our new series. Remember, the defense will come out next Thursday, Wednesday, sometime next week. Will be all the defensive and special teams players on expiring contracts and whether we should sign them or not. So far, the Stallions have not re-signed anyone, but we're hoping that we can re-sign them pretty good. And also, I might have potentially a video about free agent targets on other teams that we should try to pursue after the official period actually starts. But that might be, I know that whenever the USFL did that, it was like October, November sometime that time. So that my video might be a little bit later. But that's the first episode of the Stallion Stampede. UFL Isaac out. Stallion Stampede. Giddy up. Out. Gideon out.